development projects that seek to maintain rural character, which I could argue that a garden certainly would. Developing a gateway plan for major entry points within the town and individual villages. I think having something right in the beginning of Union Village would definitely pull people in. It's something that you can kind of see as you're passing by the pond. If you look, you can see that parcel on the corner at certain times of year. It also provides recreational opportunities for residents across all generations. Again, there are a lot of things within the town that are focused on kids and sports, which is great, but it also would be nice to have a community garden where adults could come together, learn, from different generations about gardening and food preservation. Everything that I personally learned about gardening and canning and making preserves and things like that came from my grandparents. And I know that there's a ton of knowledge within the town that we could be using to teach the younger generations, teenagers looking for community service projects, things like that. It would also be part of, there's something in here that says working with Parks and Rec to develop athletic programs for adults as well as children of all ages. I think in terms of adults that want physical activity but can't necessarily do really athletic things, we were looking at different styles of planters to be able to have people who are older or in a wheelchair come in and have a planter that's at stomach height, waist height, so they can actively work with other people, engage with other people, be physical, have some sort of movement going on in their life that they may not necessarily have, and be able to enjoy and teach other people too. There are a couple others in here that say promote public health and a sense of community through local food initiatives. They discuss larger farms, but they also say pretty emphatically encourage the development of a local community food system. I think that would be part of it. There are quite a few places that I know of. If you have extra, if you have too much, if you can't harvest it, they put little food stands out. Other people can stop by, take what they need, that sort of thing. I find my boyfriend's parents live in Cumberland, and there's somewhat of a community garden just in the middle of their neighborhood, and that is one of the things that brings that whole subdivision together, is taking walks and saying, let's go see, you meet people there. I think that there's been enough interest to get it into the comp plan. There certainly is enough interest around town in terms of trying to get people to connect with each other more, that this would be a really positive thing.
How would you handle parking in these situations? If it's like a neighborhood, you expect
It is a neighborhood. There is parking along both sides of both Milton Avenue and Arnold Avenue. St. Paul Street would be a little bit more difficult. I would say we would have to create some kind of understanding with the church on St. Paul Street to say, can we park there? There's a right of way that goes behind the parcels connecting the church on St. Paul Street to the empty lot where the park is. We're currently nice big wide path that obviously if the community garden were going to use it, we would have to maintain it.
Anybody in the public have any comments?
Good evening, my name is Tony Gurton. I live at 8 Country Way. I saw this item on the town council's agenda when it came out on Friday. And I just want to preface my statements by saying the concept of a community garden, I think is a great idea. But I think these two locations, as noted, are a bad idea. So I just want to also say I serve as chairman of the Parks and Recreation Commission here in town, and as well the Veterans Memorial Stadium Committee. I didn't sign the letter I'm about, the email I'm about to read that I sent to the council last week as chairman of either of those commissioner committees. It's personal, but I believe as far as the Parks and Recreation Commission goes, we have discussed this in the past and they would agree with me. So I'd like to read the letter I sent to the council on Friday. Good morning. I understand the following items on the agenda for Monday night's town council meeting, and it's this item about the establishing a community garden on either vacant lot on Milton Avenue, at Arnold Avenue, and/or the unused park on St. Paul Street. Ms. Staples. While the idea around establishment of a community garden may be noble and possibly provide value to the community, I have multiple concerns with these specific locations for this proposed use, including these lots, St. Paul Street and Milton Avenue, are currently designated by the town of North Smithfield as recreation facilities, but in reality, they are little more than vacant lots. I believe improving them to actually serve the town as active recreation areas as so designated would make more sense. They have been little more than vacant lots for many years now, which in and of itself is shameful. I believe the North Smithfield Town Council has considered, after an appraisal was done, and I believe it was done, selling the lots to then be developed as tax revenue producing house lots. Has this idea been abandoned? I hope not. The St. Paul Street vacant lot has essentially no available safe parking areas, other than potentially on private property, maybe the church down the street, and limited access. I believe a safety hazard would be developed with any use other than a house lot or neighborhood playground utilized by area residents who would walk there. Traffic on St. Paul Street can reach 50 miles an hour. Terry, I believe you have a business on St. Paul Street. Cars do fly up and down that road. Do we really want to encourage or enable on-street parking anywhere near that lot? I don't think so. The Milton Avenue vacant lot has little available parking, likely only against the existing fence surrounding the lot. I would take issue with what was communicated by Ms. Staples in relation to parking. I was there today. There are 6 feet available grass, 6 feet of grass available on Milton Avenue, and there is no parking. It abuts a pond on the other side of the street. There is no parking on the other side of the street. You know what? Don't take my word for it or her word for it. Go there yourselves and see. On the side street, Arnold, there's about 4 feet of grass. They are narrow streets. There is no parking across the street either. Parking is not, you'd have to park against the fence, and right now it's all wet. I suggest any use of that vacant lot for a garden should be preceded by extensive soil testing as well. And who would pay for that? I am not an engineer. I am not a developer. I'm not a soil scientist either. So how anyone can make any assertions as to the viability of that parcel as a house lot, I have no idea how anyone can comment on that unless they are an engineer, a soil scientist, and have actually done a study of that lot. As far as I know, a successful community garden requires lots of water. Where would that water come from, and how would any establishment of a water source be funded? We've discussed multiple recreation-related projects and initiatives over the past 2 years. And this isn't the first time I've been in front of the council. You know what we've been doing in Parks and Rec, and as well with Veterans Memorial Stadium, so I'm sure you're aware of where that's going. Including developing the recently purchased lot adjacent to the entry to Pacheco Park to alleviate and remove an existing safety hazard. I believe that's a big reason the town purchased that. The funding of bathrooms in the concession stand at the Dr. Paul F. Joyce Athletic Complex, for which $100,000 has been allocated in the financial FY 2019 municipal budget. And why aren't we moving forward with that? At a minimum, the engineering for that project. Opening up existing wooded areas at Pacheco Park for multi-use active recreation, which is desperately needed by our school athletic teams. I think you have gotten some feedback from Mr. Tack, the athletic director, on that as well. And funding additional capital improvements to the Dr. Paul F. Joyce Athletic Complex. Shouldn't we be galvanized to advance these identified initiatives before we entertain anything else? Could a community garden potentially be beneficial to the town of North Smithfield? I believe it could be, but with essential study, established criteria, and infrastructure requirements such as access, parking, water, and permitted usage and detailed criteria fully resolved. Additionally, the town of North Smithfield applied for and was awarded a grant from the Rhode Island DEM for a type trike park at the Bushy Playground, yet another vacant lot designated as a town recreational facility a few years ago. And we have done nothing as a town to move forward with that project. I was approached by area residents asking why we haven't moved forward on what we asked the state of Rhode Island to fund and have now reneged upon, and had promised to area residents. I have no solid answers for them. Are we as a town to now look at another project without reviewing and then mobilizing what we already have on our collective plate? I certainly hope not. Let's get the things we've identified as priorities done, or even started, before we move on to something else. Please. Thank you. If you have any questions for me, I'm glad to take them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments on the community garden?
May I respond? I applaud his impassioned speech. Need for funding for the Parks and Recs Commission. Not once during my proposal did I suggest that the town take on any of the financial burden of the development of this park. I also can understand his concerns about parking, but I also live in that neighborhood and am well aware of what is capable and what is not capable of the land. While I do not have my soil certification or my PE yet, I can certainly say with surety that no home can be built on that land, and that land is essentially useless. St. Paul Street, I'll tell you straight up, you could put a house there. You could sell that. But what good would that do to the residents of that community? Both of these areas have been identified as having the tightest zoning, smallest lots. Some are 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. These people don't have room for gardens. Giving them an opportunity to walk over, as Mr. Gerton said, to be able to have a garden within their community without being able to go far from their home is something that I think is worth more than the $3,000 or $4,000 that you would get in taxes. I also think that the inability of the town to fund all of Parks and Recs projects that they have going on has absolutely nothing to do with residents of the town coming before you and asking you to allow them to create something their own within the community. Part of the lease, all of the infrastructure of all of the other projects has been that the town is held harmless, indemnified. None of the costs are accrued by the town. The person or group leasing the land pays lease fees to the town, generating, albeit a very small amount of income nonetheless. I don't really see any sort of validity to this other than a plea for more funds for projects that have not been completed. my personal opinion.
So I think personally, I would like to know what an agreement would look like. Just to know, like we've heard, like there's lease fees, there's all this stuff, without really knowing the next steps. I personally can't make a decision. I feel like without knowing concrete, what does this look like? It's almost like just closing your eyes. I think it's a great value. I just want to know what are the next steps.
Of course. I'm here today not looking for a decision. I'm absolutely not looking for a decision. This is something that I've been working on for a month now, that I'm going to take a significant amount of time more to work on and to come to some sort of very solid agreement to present you for approval. My reason for being here today is because this was identified publicly within a Parks and Rec meeting as something that the town was interested in selling as a way to fund a Parks and Rec project or several other Parks and Rec projects. I'm here to say that there are other people who want to use these lots for other things other than creating more homes within the community. That can be a benefit, more benefit than just a single family house within the community. We ask that you consider that whenever anything comes before you, knowing that there is something else, other residents who want to see different uses. If you'd like to see more, if this is something that you think maybe you could support as a council, I would be happy to put in the work to create a lease. I could work with Mr. Igliozzi. I have no problem doing so. But I didn't want to walk in here today having put hours upon hours of work into something that you may just say, no, I really don't want that. I'm here today to say there's something else going on. If you'd like to entertain the idea, I will put the work into it. But I wanted to make certain that this was something that the council would consider in these two places.
I would consider it, but first of all, Mr. Gurton, these projects, because of Mr. Pendergast being every committee everywhere, and finding he's getting the help he needs, etc. You have your committee, you're on. They haven't even been started. Am I right? The tri-part was never started. And I'm not faulting you. I just didn't think you've expanded where there'll be a possibility now.
Which projects in particular?
Well, the type next to the police station, that I used to be my grandchildren do. And can I tell you, it was just some old plastic stuff that was hanging around. Couldn't do much there. And as far as other lots within the town, which are in the heavy population, and only had for a long time a picnic. That's what I remember going to that area. Setting something up, I feel any area that we can utilize for a play area for children to have a kickball game. Not everybody has a big yard. So if there's some place in that area that we can play, it would be nice. I'd like to know the extent of this garden. I'm open to this, but I just feel there are a lot of plans that began, and I feel confident that with the committee, now we have a head of Parks and Recreation, that we'll see this come. I really do. So, I'd love to support and find more about what you have in mind. But also, Tony, I know you have many projects that you're intently organizing to get all this started. And most of the people in town are going to be behind you. I'm speaking for myself, but there's been a lot of talk about it. And they're happy that we have a group of people that are adamant on getting all this stuff finally begun. So it's not, I'm saying, I would just like to see more, and how some of the problems such as water, etc. And more coverage, because if we own that land and anything happens.
There are other areas in the town that, for instance, there may be some areas that can be identified at Hallowell. There's not going to be a school there anymore. I believe the main building over there, the cafeteria, the gym, has got potential to serve multiple uses for the town if it's kept intact. A community center, a senior center, a meeting space. There's a lot of potential there. Maybe there's an area at Hallowell that can be identified. There's also water already at Hallowell. And that's certainly not, I hope anyway, not a parcel that the town would ever consider selling or getting rid of in any manner. That's a fantastic spot. So maybe your group could consider looking at Hallowell. But the two lots that are part of this agenda item, I strongly suggest, we're already deficient. If you look at, we've been through this, we came to you a year ago, the Parks and Rec Commission, and discussed the deficiencies we have in this town as far as active recreation goes. And these have been part of the problem, really. So if we can turn them into active recreation, I mean, there's a sign in front of the St. Paul Street playground. You can't even read it. I took a picture of it today. I'll email it to you. You walk by there, you don't even know what it is. And there's some small fixtures on it. There's a swing that you could call a playground type piece of apparatus, I guess. But the rest of it is stuff that came out of people's backyards, I'm sure. And we are portraying this as a town, as a playground. That's wrong. We shouldn't be doing that. So